Hello guys and welcome to my channel. The fall of Kabul will certainly be an event that will continue to linger in the minds of people and governments around the world, as developments from its aftermath continue to unfold, and who knows just how bad things are going to get before they get worse. Today, we are going to take you through some of the recent events following the completion of the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan and the many criticisms facing President Biden and his actions to these events. Before we begin, please subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell. President Biden looks at his watch during the solemn ceremony of the 13 dead soldiers. Following the terror attack near Kabul airport that killed 13 U.S. soldiers, and the arrival of their bodies at Dover Air Force Base where a solemn ceremony was being held for the soldiers, President Biden was seen glancing at his watch during the ceremony, and this raised a lot of eyebrows. Biden and First Lady Jill Biden were at the airport for a dignified transfer ceremony, a somber military ritual of receiving the bodies of fallen service members who died in foreign combat. During the event, he placed his right hand to his chest as the flag-draped coffins were carried off the Air Force C-17 Globemaster plane. But at one point the commander-in-chief appeared to cast a furtive glance at his watch before putting his arms behind his back, prompting criticisms from veterans, Republican politicians, and conservative commentators. Samuel Williams, a disabled U.S. Army veteran, said on Twitter that he looks like he was being inconvenienced by having to show some respect for these American heroes. He further went on to say, "You can see him jerk his left hand to pull the watch out from under his sleeve, then look down at it." Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee also wrote on Twitter, "Many of us remember President Bush 41 checking his watch during a debate and how awful it looked, even though we all felt the same way about that debate, but this is shocking and will be remembered." Former White House Dr. Representative Ronnie Jackson, Republican, Texas, said in his tweet, "Apparently our commander-in-chief has better things to do than honor the 13 service members who died on his watch." Others that have criticized President Biden is Adam Baldwin, an actor best known for his role in the science fiction TV show Firefly, 2002, who mockingly captioned the video, "Only 10 more minutes until my next dose. Right, Jill?" Actor Nick Searcy quipped, "He has another meeting," and Daniel Gade, an Iraq War veteran and a former Republican nominee for U.S. Senate in Virginia, asked, "Are you bored, Mr. President?" The 13 troops who were killed in Kabul had been assisting with the evacuation of Americans and Afghans after the swift fall of the country's government. Among the casualties were 11 Marines, 1 Navy corpsman, and 1 Army soldier. The victims ranged in age from 20 to 31, including 23-year-old Marine Sergeant Nicole G., who was captured last week in a photo cooing over an Afghan infant. Biden has also drawn the ire of some of the parents of those killed, including Kathy McCollum, who blasted the president as dementia-ridden over the death of her son Riley, 20 years old. Taliban soldiers wearing U.S. military uniforms. The Taliban has been showing off its own special forces on social media, and these soldiers are spotting new uniforms equipped with looted American equipment who contrasts sharply with the image of the usual Afghan insurgent, and these new uniforms are supposedly the U.S. military uniforms. Pictures and videos of fighters in the so-called Badri 313 unit of special forces have been posted online for propaganda purposes to underline how the Taliban have better equipped and trained men at their disposal than in the past. The soldiers are shown in uniforms, boots, balaclavas, and body armor similar to those worn by special forces around the world, and unlike the shalwar kameez, turban, and sandals of the traditional Taliban fighter. Rather than a battered Russian-designed Kalashnikov rifle slung over their shoulder, the men of Badri 313 hold new U.S.-made rifles such as the M4, sometimes with night vision goggles and advanced gun sights. A Western weapons expert who writes anonymously on Twitter under the pseudonym of Caliber Obscura said the unit would be no match for Western special forces or those of India or Pakistan. They are more effective than normal Taliban and certainly more than standard Afghan National Army troops from a couple of weeks ago. The Taliban terrorists in their new uniforms were seen taking over the Kabul airport and celebrating the U.S. withdrawal by firing in the air. The uniforms and weapons brandished by the men appear to be taken from stockpiles that U.S. Special Forces had provided to the Afghan army. American citizens being left behind. Nemo residio is a Latin phrase that means leave no one behind. It is such a fundamental American value that this commitment is embedded in the creed of several branches of the U.S. military. Yet some American citizens are being left behind now that the last plane has left Kabul on Monday. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said on Monday, and I quote, "We believe there are still a small number of Americans, under 200 and likely closer to 100, who remain in Afghanistan and want to leave." This contradicts Joe Biden's previous comments during an August 18 interview with George Stephanopoulos when he said, "If there are American citizens left, we're going to stay to get them all out." A couple of weeks ago, the Biden administration was saying there were 10,000 to 15,000 U.S. citizens in Afghanistan. As recently as last week, the Washington Post was citing that number. Then, all of a sudden, the Biden administration began saying that there were just 6,000 U.S. citizens who wanted to leave as of August 14. After accounting for the current evacuations, that meant there would be just a few hundred Americans left in Afghanistan. Not everyone is buying it, though. Michael Pregent, a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, a conservative think tank based in Washington, D.C., and a former intelligence officer, disputes the administration's numbers. He tweeted, "Thousands of Americans remain in Afghanistan that wants to leave, and this hundreds left is political math. We shouldn't leave one behind, but lying about the numbers abandons hope for thousands of Americans trying to get out." If he's right, it could be a huge scandal. A simpler and less sinister explanation is that this boils down to gross incompetence on the part of the Biden administration. There is a huge gap between 15,000 and 6,000. But even if we assume that the administration is now shooting straight with us, their estimation was so far off that their competence should be questioned, as well as the veracity of their new data. Regardless, the administration has invited suspicion with their initial estimate. There is a real chance that the Americans left behind will be taken hostage or worse for ransom or propaganda purposes. If there is one remaining bit of hope we can cling to, it's this: the United States and other countries have supposedly brokered a deal whereby the Taliban will allow safe passage for people who want to leave Afghanistan in the future. Biden better hopes they are motivated by money enough to keep their promise. Abandoning Americans is not something that will be forgotten in a news cycle or two. August 31, 2021, is another day that will live in infamy, but not because of foreign aggression against America. The recent incompetence and callousness of our government toward both the Afghan and American people make it also a day of national shame. The Afghanistan debacle will forever mark the Biden tenure as a disaster, and a bitter validation of Robert Gates's 2020 indictment that Biden had been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy issue in the last 40 years. His entire presidential campaign was premised on his claim of unique foreign policy judgment and experience to serve as commander-in-chief. The world now sees that the U.S. president's judgment may be permanently flawed, and that he has learned nothing or all the wrong lessons from his long government service. Biden pays lip service to taking responsibility. The buck stops here, while pointing the finger of blame at 1. Former President Trump, 2. The Afghan government, 3. The Afghan army, 4. U.S. intelligence, 5. His generals, and finally, 6. The Afghan people for resisting immigration until it was too late. Trump has called on Biden to resign in disgrace and asserts that if he were now president, the world would find that the withdrawal from Afghanistan would be conditions-based. The Taliban leaders would have understood what they are doing now would not have been acceptable. Given Trump's record, the claim is credible. In the end, Trump and Biden shared a low opinion of America's Afghan allies, and it influenced their collective decisions to pull the plug on the 20-year venture. Like their predecessors, neither saw the value to U.S. national interest in an indefinite, low-level, lower-cost U.S. presence devoted to counterterrorism and sufficient to contain the Taliban's ambitions. Today's shame and tragedy are all on Biden. Tomorrow's will flow from 2 decades of limited presidential vision and unwillingness to level with the American people. Let's hope the incompetence of this administration doesn't cause adverse effects for America and its people. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to be updated on the latest happenings. Like, comment, and hit the notification button to be notified the next time I post new video. See ya.